Hi there, and welcome to our tutorial on IT discovery, migration, and optimization with Flexera and RiverMeadow. Let's take a start by doing some introductions. I'm Rick Cameron from RiverMeadow. With me on the RiverMeadow team, I have Paul Maniton, who will take us through the technical migration steps. Hans?
Yep, and then thank you, Rick. Hans Hegge here, Channel Account Manager of Cloud Solutions. And on my team, we'll have Brian Cox, which will be talking about cloud optimization, and Sam Barbeau, who will be walking us through discovery. So really quick, what does that look like in the cloud journey? Pre-migration work, so understanding what you own, where it's located, and then how all those devices communicate with each other. Sam will be walking us through that part of the conversation. Then we are going to pass it over to Paul at RiverMeadow, who will actually be talking about and doing a live demo of migrating those business services or application stacks. And once they are migrated over, we'll then have Brian pick us up on the post-migration and optimization part. And I'll explain here in the future what that looks like. So the big challenge is most people think this is a dependency map that you're looking at here. So I cannot derive any data from that, especially at scale, right? I'm not talking 20 servers or 10 servers, right? I'm talking hundreds of devices or thousands of devices or tens of thousands of devices. It's very tough to derive any information from that. What we do is we're able to automatically group what you see on the left into application stacks or business services. And then you can note from the red lines, critical dependencies, or the orange lines, non-critical dependencies. You can then look at what apps have been rationalized or have context put around them by the green check marks, which means they are ready for migration.
Next step would be to take the dependency map and move that into a move group for the migration tool that will allow us to take the application sets and perform a migration on the entire application set. It's important to understand that we can take physical, virtual, and cloud to many different environments. This also allows us specifically to be able to do data center migration to cloud, cloud to cloud, and also data center to data center.
Once everything is in the cloud, if that's your choice and your target and where you're going, we're then able to optimize. And this is where Brian will come in and speak about, well, how do you get visibility into your environment? How do you back charge certain departments for usage? We then will transition into recommendations. So how do we use software and analytics to recommend certain ways to optimize your environment around cost savings? And then how do you ultimately take action, right? Because all of this is kind of wasted unless we actually put into practice what we've learned. And so how do you take action on that? We can help with automating some of those actions. A few of the clients that we've done work with over the past 12 years or so. And with that, Sam, I will turn it over to you.
Hello, this is Sam Barbeau with Flexera. What we'll be covering today is the Flexera Cloudscape solution and how that can be leveraged to help automate the discovery and application portfolio analysis of a client's environment, but also understand how we can leverage this to then feed into a migration solution like RiverMeadow. So we'll be looking at the initial discovery, dependency mapping, application grouping, where we can identify some performance, identify easy, low-hanging fruit, then begin that migration with RiverMeadow. So to start, the Flexera Cloudscape solution is completely agentless. So when we look at deploying the virtual appliance, which is the RN150, the collector that we'll leverage for performance collection, will actually include some standard credentials for polling purposes, things like WMI and SSH, SNMP for the different devices and OS images in the network. We're also leveraging some intellectual property to take that collected data, both connectivity and performance, and turn it into something a little bit more actionable, right? So to leverage things like application rationalization, understanding the instance right sizing that we can take advantage of in cloud, understanding where we can develop different migration plans, but also provide things like interdependencies and relationships for the application stacks for an application-centric view of the environment. So we're leveraging an automated discovery and collection, leveraging the kind of intellectual property that Flexera Cloudscape has powering that engagement, as well as any additional intelligence that we leverage with the customers and partners working with the solution. On top of that, we're going to then consume and take action on that data, because at the end of the day, our focus is to migrate. So what we'll be looking for is actually the integration with RiverMeadow to take that application stack or workload and lift and shift that into cloud. So what I want to do is go straight into a demonstration. You see here our sandbox environment. It's got roughly 110 different devices in it that we're actively collecting performance data against. This is just our main dashboard where we have things like Assessment Digest, where we have different application stacks, and then some other items like threats and devices by type. This is where we've leveraged the solution to address not just cloud migration, but even things like compliance and security, LAN segmentation, DR initiatives, as well as ongoing CMDB enrichment and enhancement. So what I'm going to do is focus on one of our application stacks here called payroll. It's something that we went through and named because our application grouping actually identified that there was connectivity between these 5 workloads, as well as a shared database here. And what we did is we then renamed this application stack to payroll to give it some context. And as you can see here on the screen, we have some performance information as well. We see that this is a good candidate for cloud migration because it is less expensive on an hourly basis than the current on-prem cost. So we do have, as part of the solution, a way to calculate the total cost of ownership for an application stack. And then we can also see from a tag distribution perspective where we have some rehostable or replatform-able systems along with performance profiles. So if you need to determine where there were zombie servers in your environment, where there were idle systems that had perhaps not had upwards of 20% utilization over the past 90 days. These are all items that, again, we're automatically collecting, displaying back in the UI that then we can take action on. In fact, if I wanted to look at payroll from a instance sizing perspective, under the optimized IaaS cost, we can actually see that the C5 larges were the recommended instance based on usage, or we can see for the entire environment what the IaaS cloud pricing would be, what the individual application stacks would look like in different providers, so to do some predictive cost analysis, or you can go in and generate a prioritized migration scorecard based on some criteria or values. For instance, if we leveraged one of the templates that we have today, identified as low-hanging fruit, we could see that based on a set of criteria, payroll is actually our second prioritized application stack for migration in this use case. So we think that that's incredibly valuable to help automate this migration planning part of the process. So as we look at this, payroll is the second application stack we should focus on. If I go back to our application stacks, we'll identify payroll again. I'll just search this here. So we have this group of interdependencies. We see that this has been confirmed by myself some time ago, and we also see that we have workloads that need to be brought with it based on perhaps client or partner intervention, and by manipulating this interdependency. We can also see any dependent stacks. So if we were to migrate payroll, we may know to migrate some other application stack. In this case, they're shared services, so we'll leave those for now. Application stack payroll, once we go in, we hit action, we hit migrate, and we can migrate with RiverMeadow. And so that's what we'll be picking up with in the next section.
Sam, that was a great overview. Really appreciate that ability to show us how to organize the chaos into business service groups and and application stacks. Now I'd like to turn it over to Paul. Paul is with RiverMeadow. He's the technical service director with them, and he's going to walk us through how we take the data that Cloudscape has discovered in the application dependencies and business service groups and break those down into individual devices so that you can start the migration process. So Paul, with that, over to you.
So before we do a demo, let me just take you through a couple of slides that show you why RiverMeadow was such a great choice for migrating to the cloud. We have some unique selling points that I'd like to take you through. So firstly, we're quick to install. We're a SaaS-based platform. That means that we can install quickly. We're low risk. There's no agent to deploy, so there's no additional change management or security worries. The production machine stays running throughout the process right up until we cut over. We don't modify that production machine during the migration process. We treat it as a read-only copy. We don't see any of your data, so there's no GDPR compliance worries. That means that we hit first migration in excess of 90% of the time. What other benefits do we offer? So as I've already said, we are a SaaS-based platform, but we do offer the ability to deploy our software into your target cloud to keep it self-contained. We're agentless, so there's minimal additional change management required. We're automated, and we also have RESTful APIs so that we can integrate into your existing systems. We are a live migration method, so we duplicate the production machine into the cloud, leaving the production machine live during the process. We do a migration readiness assessment, making sure that everything is in place for the migration to be successful, and there's nothing that's going to stop it being so. We do full differential and data-only migrations, keeping data migration to a minimum. We don't require hypervisor access on-premise. We do our data transfer over your secure network. We mitigate risk by allowing you to test the clone in the target cloud. We support all the OSs of the source and target platforms. And we have a high rate of success, in excess of 90%. So here's the RiverMeadow SaaS platform. What I want to show you here is that we've taken the information that we got from that Flexera discovery and we've imported it into what we call a move group. So all of the information imported from Cloudscape into a single move group. What we're going to do for the sake of this demo is we're just going to migrate one of the servers. It's a fairly straightforward process. We just click on the cloud icon at the end here. And that takes us into a dialog box which allows us to choose the platform that we want to migrate to. We don't need to click anything else, we can just accept the defaults here. What we'll then do is we'll go away and we'll see if we can get to that cloud appliance which is in the target platform, and we'll also then start to run those pre-flight checks that I talked about previously, checking that everything that we need is in place and nothing that's going to cause us a problem. That check will take a couple of seconds, and so we'll just skip forward slightly to that point. And we can see the checks are complete. There's a warning there about the cloud init file, but we don't need to worry about that at this stage, so we can click to continue. What we're going to do now is we're going to fill out the migration profile. This determines all the information we need to know about the landing zone. So we're just going to change the name quickly. We're going to put an AWS on the front. So as I said, in the migration profile, we're going to configure everything we need to know about the landing zone and the machine when it lands. So we'll need to put it on a network. In this case, we're going to assign it a public IP address. This is just for the purposes of this migration. You don't have to assign a public IP address normally. Then we need to assign a network security group or a security group here. That means that we've got the security set up for when this machine actually starts up. So we just need to select the instance type and we're ready to go. Quick check and then click on continue and we'll start the migration process. Now we'll get a warning here because we had a warning when we did the pre-flight checks. We can continue past that. What we do now is we actually run another set of pre-flight checks to make sure that nothing we've selected in this profile will conflict with anything to make the migration fail. Once that's done, it'll start the migration. This is a very quick process and you'll see a green box flash up very quickly in a second. And there we go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and just check this migration has started properly. And we can see the steps involved. And we're going to pause it here and wait until this actually finishes so that we don't have to watch it continue. So we're going to whiz through this in demo time. It won't take very long, and you can see that we go through all three steps fairly quickly here. This actually took about 20 minutes. Now you can see that the migration is completed. We can see that it's got a target and a source information in there. And we now have a machine in the cloud ready to go.
Paul, thank you very much. I enjoyed the three-step process that you showed that RiverMeadow has the capabilities of helping with the migration process. I also like the transparency into the errors that could potentially pop up, as well as the progress bars to help with the migration process. Now let's turn it over to Brian Cox, who's Director of Field Sales for Cloud Solutions, who will walk us through the post-migration side. Brian, what should be considered after you've done a migration? When you work with customers, what is the top question that customers have?
So now that you've migrated to the cloud, common question we get is what's next? And it typically starts and ends with these three steps, and it's kind of a rinse and repeat of these three. But basically, we will start with visibility. So we will digest your cloud spend, whether that's AWS, Azure, and Google, and then we'll get our team engaged. So we have a cost optimization service that's a team of cloud experts. What's great about them is they're tracking cloud cost trends globally across the global 2000s. So they'll see things and be able to get your team up to speed on best practices before you'll be able to. They've been doing this for the past 10 plus years. So they're an incredibly useful resource. Typically, our customers use them around 6 hours a month. And they're doing anything from cost optimization recommendations to reporting and analysis. Those recommendations and the analysis feeds into taking action. So we have reactive and proactive templates that can take action on your cloud spend or really across any use case. And the thing to think about when you get to this phase is, how do I start passing out reports that allow people to get informed? And then how do we move to automation? So most of the folks that we're working today, they start with visibility, then they go to recommending contextualized optimizations, and then they start automating these actions. And we'll show you this in the platform. So on day one, we'll digest your cloud spend. And for that workload that you migrated there, it'll be made up of a number of different services. So right now, we're on the executive level dashboard that shows all of your spend, and we're sliced by service. You could change this to slice by resource type, for example, so we can see exactly what's made up of that workload that you migrated. But we'll digest anything on your cloud bill. So as your workloads expand in the cloud, this dashboard gives you the ability to report on your spend daily, weekly, or monthly, and historically as well. And the great thing about these dashboards is they're completely customizable. So as you need to dig into the cost of data transfer, for example, or your reserved instance purchases, we'll give you the granularity all the way down to the resource level that's associated with that application. On day two, what people do with us is they need to actually allocate that spend. So whether it's for the workload that you migrated or for specific groups, they create showback centers. We call them billing centers within the product, and it's basically an allocation of cloud accounts or tags. But the point is to contextualize who's spending what and where, and then to actually contextualize recommendations to each of these billing centers. So you can see that within Dunder Mifflin, the engine is finding around $400 to save. In Soylent Corp, it's a little bit higher, around $1,200 within the given month. As far as optimizations go, we have a recommendations engine that'll provide optimization opportunities. We take in recommendations from the third-party providers, and then we also contextualize them with that cost optimization team that we talked about. And I'll give you a simple example. So once we find an opportunity to save money, the policy catalog allows us to act on these recommendations. And this is key because visibility, if it just stops there, it doesn't actually solve the problem of optimizing your environment. So if we take a simple example like unattached volumes, we can come into the catalog. We have a pre-built asset And again, this is governance as code, so you can edit the code and optimize these as needed. But essentially, you can come in and set a schedule. Typically, our customers run a daily, weekly, or monthly, especially for unattached volumes. You can select all of your cloud estate, or you can segment this out as needed and then identify volumes that have been attached for a given number of days. Depends on how aggressive you want to get here. With dev test, it might be 15 days, and with production, it might be 60. We'll set this for 15 days. And if there were unattached volumes that I wanted to exclude, I could do that if I wanted. So to set this in context, this engine can digest any REST API. It can then report and take action on that. We provide use cases out of the box. A simple example is unattached volumes, where you come in, you see what you have unattached, and then you get rid of them to save money. So that's a reactive example. Of course, we have other examples that span a number of different use cases, whether it's security compliance or operational management. A good example might be looking for long-stopped instances that you can optimize, or disallowed regions that people aren't supposed to be running in, or even utilizing recommendations from the cloud providers, like taking advantage of AWS savings plans or reserved instances. We have around 100 to 200 out-of-the-box policies that you can edit and get going with on day one. That's typically where people start their optimization journey. Nirvana tends to be more on the proactive side, though. So actually having developers and people that need to get access to cloud spin up cost-optimized, secure, and compliant resources by default. So the idea would be to provide a catalog where they can get access to their daily work. And this could integrate with anything that they're used to and familiar with, like CloudFormation, ARM templates, Terraform, Ansible, Salt, Chef, etc., but just in a governed way. And so we have a very simple example where you can actually place a development workload, for example, in the cheapest public or private cloud option. So a developer can come in, they can write their cloud app name, and they can spin up that environment with the proper performance profiles, deployment options, cost centers for show back and charge back and schedules for cost optimization. It'll actually go out and look for the cheapest public or private environment. Another good example would be, the cloud app that waits for approval. So this could be an environment that you migrated and that your developers will need to get access over and over again, but you actually want to make sure that they need it. So this catalog item will send a incident to ServiceNow, and the manager will have to approve it before the developer will get access. So this really would apply to any use case that you migrate, whether it's in a public or a private cloud, a container, a VM, a PaaS workload. It doesn't matter. The use case here is to be proactive about what gets into the cloud before it gets there. And then when you need to be reactive about cleaning it up, that's when folks use the policy engine for guardrails. So that's a quick tour of what happens once you've migrated to the cloud. You start with visibility, then we provide recommendations that are both driven from the platform, then also from our team to add contextualization, and then we can help you take action on it. So whether that's with automated guardrails and policies or templates that are a bit more proactive, we certainly would be happy to help you out.
Brian, thank you so much for filling us in on the post-migration and how we can help automate and optimize once they are in the cloud. Just to quickly review, we did cover the pre-migration work that's done in order to create application groups. We then worked with the RiverMeadow team, and you were able to see how to physically do a migration in almost real time with Paul. And just wanted to let you know that we have bundled together, both companies have worked together to bundle together the pre-migration discovery work that needs to be done, as well as the migration work in order to create some special pricing. And so we appreciate you guys watching this webinar.
So thank you for your time. We appreciate you guys watching with us. And we do have special pricing, and you can contact us through the email addresses above. Thank you.